My name's Kirsten McConnachie. I'm a Junior Research Fellow here at the Refugee Studies Centre, and my research studies governance and administration of justice in refugee camp settings. So this is an area that to date has had very little policy or academic attention, primarily because there's an assumption that refugee camps will be policed by the national police and courts, but in practice that tends not to happen. That could be for a variety of practical reasons, that people don't speak the same language, that it's transport is difficult to arrange, it could be that people can't afford to go through a legal process. But there can also be an active preference on the part of refugees to deal with problems internally within the community through refugee-led justice systems. And to the extent that these have been discussed in the literature so far, it's seen as potentially highly problematic to have a reliance on internal policing, and there's a high risk of human rights violations. My work acknowledges those concerns, but also looks at an alternative possibility, which is that refugee-led justice systems can actually be a very important tool for protection of refugees in a camp context, and also an essential means for responding to crimes and disputes that happen in a camp environment. So my doctoral research studied governance and administration of justice among Karen refugees living in camps on the Thai-Burma border, and that took a broadly ethnographic approach to trying to understand where refugees' ideas of justice and governance had come from historically, how they'd been established in the camp environment, and then how those internal systems intersected with other approaches like international human rights standards and so forth. So that will be published next year as a monograph with Routledge called Governing Refugees. What I'll do over the next 3 years here at the RSC is continue to look at these ideas of self-governance and justice, but to take a more broad comparative approach, so looking at a range of camp settings and trying to understand more about how refugees have responded to encampment, what roles they take in management of the community, and what kind of administration of justice work happens. My research uses a mix of criminology, anthropology of law, and then material from forced migration studies. So I see two real dimensions to my work, and in looking at self-governance and community governance, these are questions that in criminology are quite familiar in terms of how much autonomy should a community justice system have, what kind of relationship should it have with a state system, should we even have community justice systems at all. So to that extent, they're questions that are quite familiar in domestic criminology. But I'm also very interested in the camp as a particular site and space, which makes this quite a unique social and legal environment. And refugees come to camps with a different set of cultural values or understandings of law from the host community, potentially. And they also exist within a very different set of relationships to people in the host society. So as refugees living in camps, they have a very different relationship with the national police structures. They're also engaged with international organisations and so forth. So what I want to try and do is bring together these arguments from domestic criminology to the specific context of a refugee camp.